Welcome to Fueling Your Legacy, hosted by Samuel Knickerbocker. Each week, we expose the faulty foundational mindsets of the past and rebuild a new, stronger foundation essential in creating your legacy. We've got a lot of work to do, so let's get started. Welcome back to Fuel Your Legacy. Today, we're talking about a really fun book. I read this first maybe about 2 or 3 years ago. It's called The Happiness Advantage by Shawn Achor. And I got exposed to him initially through a school psychology class because we were talking about positive psychology, right? So he's a positive psychologist and has worked really hard at understanding how things work. Wrote a book about it. I first was exposed to the TEDx talk that's about 12 minutes long. That is an awesome talk as well. I suggest going and looking up Shawn Achor, Happiness Advantage, TEDx. I think it's in Bloomington, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, YouTube, you'll be able to pull it up there. But this is what I like about this book is it really puts in perspective the value of positive, not just positive psychology, but positive statistics. One of the examples that he uses in his TEDx talk and talks about it in the book is that generally in statistics, we want to eliminate all the outliers. We want to just find out what the average is, the average trend, and then say this is normal. Everything else on the outside of that's not normal. I was talking with some colleagues just last few days, and we're talking about some of the performances in our business, and they're saying, well, it might be nice if we could remove the outliers, the bottom 10% and the top 10%, and just see what the average is. And although that's helpful, it doesn't really show us. I mean, it'd be better off to just say, hey, what's the top 10%? Let's all work toward being the top 10% and forget what the average is, because the average doesn't really matter. It's okay to know what it is, but if that's where we're trying to bring people up to, then that's not really long-term effective, because now all the people who were above average, now they're now being educated or challenged at the non-average rate. Well, at the average rate, but not at the level that they could be in. I was at a business conference last week, and one of my mentors, he's talking about what would life have been like if he had joined my business underneath me, right? If I was his manager or his trainer, how would I have challenged him? How would I have given them the expectations of excellence, right? And the reality is I would not have the way that he was challenged when he started, because of my own disbelief about what I'm able to do, right? And so because of that, he's grateful that he didn't come into my business, but he actually went into somebody else's business, got challenged to do something that was insurmountable, like way out there, and he got really close to accomplishing it 2 months in a row because he was focused on accomplishing those goals, and he believed that he could. And so what this whole book kind of discusses is what is your belief and what is the destination of kind of getting to the point where you can believe about positive things. Another example about positive psychology, I'm using just a bunch of examples here just on this one note, as it relates to statistics. My sister, she was doing a marriage therapy class, you could say, and I went and participated with my wife, and I kind of experienced this a little bit when I was studying psychology, but it just brought back to my mind, to the forefront of my mind, how there's 2 ways to share a statistic, right? If you said, hey, 50, or we'll not say 50, we'll say 75% of marriages end in divorce because there's something that cannot be, there's some aspect of their relationship they can't move past, right? That is, you might think, well, that's not necessarily super negative. It is kind of a negative statistic, because what it's doing is now every time there's a challenge in your mind, if you accept that statistic, every time there's a challenge in your mind, you're now thinking maybe this challenge is one of those things that's part of that 75%. And so you just disregard, and you end up basically saying I can't be successful, we can't make this marriage work because all of these things are probably part of the 75%. Now, the other way to say that statistic is, hey, 25% of everything you're going to deal with is completely, you can work right through it. You can work right through it. And then because of that, then now every time somebody comes into a challenge, they're thinking, hey, maybe this challenge is one of those 25% things. Maybe this is something I could work through. Okay. In my career, talk about statistics of people who have retirement. You could say 68% of Americans don't have enough money to retire. That's actually, I mean, based on statistics, that's a true statement, right? So that's one way of saying it. That creates fear. That creates, oh my gosh, some shock, some awe. What are we going to do? How do I get it? That creates mobility, right? Because people respond to fear better than they do to love. The other way to share that statistic, though, is to say, hey, 32% of all Americans are going to be able to retire, right? So the question is, what can you do to get into that top 32%, right? What do we need to do together to help you get there? And so understanding how to share statistics, and that there's two ways to, and one is more of a fear-based, the negative side of this statistic, and then there's the positive side of the statistic. And that's in this section of the book, he really nails that down and says, look, we're all talking about the averages, and it's ultimately bringing people lower and lower and lower and lower to where that average is actually not great. So that was one study that he's done over time. The other study that he's done over time, specifically working with happiness, is the thought process that if you're successful in your job, then you'll be happy. If you're successful in your job, then you'll feel successful, you'll feel fulfilled. And then he says that in reality, we keep moving the goalposts to our success. So once we accomplish something, the target moves. Once we accomplish something, the target moves again, and then again, and again. And we're never actually satisfied, because as soon as we accomplish it, we don't give ourselves time to really enjoy and celebrate what we've accomplished. We just move the target so we can keep going, so we can keep striving and get better and better and better, which is good on one side, but understanding that that's not where happiness comes from is essential, right? Happiness doesn't come from the reaching a goal, because once you reach that goal, there's a new goal. And so you're never actually happy if that's where it comes from. And through their research, they found that the most successful people, 10% of it leads to their outer environment, and what happens, their happiness and success is only 10% of their happiness, their outer success. However, inward, choosing to be happy on the inside, and what's going on inside of somebody's mind, inside their heart, inside their soul, that is 90% of whether or not somebody will be happy. So understanding that that's the case, the reason this is an important topic this week is reshifting what it is that we choose to focus on. This whole week we talked about kind of happiness and why that's important. On Friday, we're going to have Scott Wilhite on, and his story lends an enormous amount of credibility to this talk, because he was chasing what he thought was happy. He was doing all the things that he thought was going to make him happy. When he started to analyze what really was happening, though, he found that basically his happiness, he thought was not, he thought he could get happiness from accomplishment rather than internal and mindset. And I'm going to leave the rest for him to talk about. But that is something that's so prevalent in our culture. This also really goes along really well. This book goes along really well with Mindset by Carol Dweck, because it comes down to perception and what are we being told at a young age will make us happy, right? I have a 2-year-old right now, 2.5, and then an 8-month-old, and constantly we have to think about, okay, when we're praising our child, when we're trying to help him learn to be happy, are we using these rewards that are circumstantial? If so, then we're actually hurting him. We're not teaching him where true happiness comes from. We're teaching him that if you perform XYZ way, then I'll be happy, and then you can be happy as well. I won't discipline you if you act a certain way, but if you act another certain way, then you're going to be unhappy, because then I have to discipline you. And it kind of twists how somebody feels their value, and it says, well, you're only valuable, you're only going to be happy if you do X, Y, and Z. And then we raise, as these children become adults, they're basically programmed by the time they're not 8 or 9 years old. They become adults, and they're still taking their marching calls, whether or not directly or indirectly, and they're still taking their marching calls from society, saying, hey, look, if we can keep this homeostasis environment around us, then we can all be happy. But they aren't really focused on internally what makes them happy. And so the happiness advantage is really identifying what's my potential and striving for potential, and then an enormous amount of belief into what you believe your potential can be or could be or should be. And so he's done these case studies where he's gone into he talks about this in the book, but he goes into different companies and gets them all to do 21 days of a specific regiment, we'll say, to start structuring their brain differently, rewiring their brain to create the outcome of I'm consistently and constantly going to be happy and look for happiness. And so one thing that he does is every morning you have to if you decide to subscribe to this, but every morning write down 3 things that you're grateful for, and over that 21-day period, you cannot repeat any of the things. So you have to think of 3 new things that you're grateful for every day. Okay, so that's the first thing. Another thing is you just writing, before you start your day, writing a happy note to a friend, a colleague, a business partner, a client, whoever it is, but write an email or write something, a little short blurb about something you believe in, somebody you're grateful for them, that you're happy about. So those are 2 things that he says do every morning. And then over 21 days, you actually start to just think about the good in other people. You start thinking about the happiness, start thinking about the possibilities of where you could go if you were able to completely think of things from the possibility perspective rather than I only have X, Y, or Z perspective. And so that I'm going to end it there. This book is, I don't want to take too much from the other episodes this week, but this book is another one of those that I read. It gave me a lot of perspective on how to be happy and how to apply that happiness in every aspect of my life, regardless of what was going on around me. And that's a key factor in really developing happiness in the long term, is understanding where it comes from. And so if you're sitting there thinking, man, I haven't felt happy, I'm really stressed, everything around me seems to be crashing down, this book could just be your savior. I mean, this could really help you understand how to reframe your brain and rewire your brain to begin to see and experience more happiness than you ever thought possible without changing any of your outward circumstances. And I think that's the key. This is without changing anything outside of us, how can we learn to be happy on the inside? And that's what this book taught me when I read it 4 or 5 years ago. And I loved it. So that's why I'm sharing it with you guys. Super excited for this week with Scott Wilhite, and that is going to happen on Friday. Some quick reminders here. We are jumping into Life Insurance Awareness Month. That is all of September. Every year is Life Insurance Awareness Month in the United States of America. And so with that being said, I generally don't talk about what I do in this public of a setting, but for this, I'm going to throw that in there because I'm happy about it and I love what I do. A lot of people don't know how I serve clients and help them. One of the things that I do, it's not all that I do, but one of the aspects and one of the parts of somebody's portfolio is having adequate life insurance, whether that's because they just had a baby, bought a new house, got married, maybe bought a new car, started a business. I mean, there's tons of reasons why life insurance is essential. A lot of people think it's death insurance. It's not. It's life insurance. It's to be used and for you to benefit from while you're still alive. So if you are in a position where you have not had or not gotten taken advantage of getting a quote for life insurance, or if you have life insurance but you just want to see if there's cheaper options out there, please reach out to me. Again, you can text my number, text Sam at 385-263-7699. And throughout September, I'll be doing free consults and make sure that everybody has the opportunity to at least get the protection they need, because we never know what's going to happen. And so being protected, again, not to throw out the fear side of things, because statistically, you're never going to get run over by a car. Statistically, you're never going to get hit by a bullet. You're never going to get killed by a shark. You're never going to get killed by an elephant. You're never going to be in a plane crash. Okay, so statistically, all of that is true, and that's fantastic, and that's great. Insurance really is for the negative side of the statistic, just making sure that if something were to happen, you're covered. And that's really what I want to make sure for all of my friends, family, anybody who listens, that you actually have adequate coverage that's going to last until you die, not just until it expires, but until you die. So we'll talk to you soon. And if you would like to learn more about that and do an insurance review, then go ahead and text SAM to 385-263-7699. We'll catch you next time on Fuel Your Legacy. Thanks for joining us today. If what you heard resonated with you, please like, comment, and share on social media. Tag me so I can give you a shout out on the next episode. And thanks to all those who have left a review. It helps spread the message of what it really takes to build a legacy that lasts. Catch you next time on Fueling Your Legacy.